Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club Financial Edition, and today we're continuing our reading of The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. The subtitle is called A Second Look at the Federal Reserve, and the book that we're using is the fifth edition. So this book was inspired by fundamentals. I think that the monetary structure is a very important part of our daily lives. And, I think it's important to understand it, to know it, to learn how it works, to know how the game is played, what the rules are, although the rules change all the time. But, understand how it works in our daily lives, and maybe we can navigate. Hopefully, we can navigate through it by learning about its history and things of that nature. So this is the inspiration for this book. And it's also a classic book. People who are in the finance arena, I'm sure have heard of this book and read it. So, anyways, that's why we're reading it. Okay, before we begin, if you like our format, if you like what we do here, consider checking out our other book clubs. On Mondays, we have our spiritual book clubs where we read spiritual books. And then Wednesdays, we have our health book club where we read books on health. And this particular book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, falls under the financial aspect, financial book club. So I want to welcome those who are new, welcome, welcome. And those who are returning, welcome, welcome. We put all our book clubs that we've read in the past as well as the present ones on YouTube. So consider checking out our YouTube channel. We have other things going on there as well, not just book clubs. So please check them out and like and subscribe and comment and all that good stuff. And also consider signing up for our free monthly newsletter as well, to kind of keep, follow us, what we're doing and things like that. If you have a book you would like to recommend for us to read, whether it's a spiritual book or a health book or a financial book, I'll leave a link in the description box below and you guys can let us know what books you would like us to read and we will consider it. And we want to thank you very much for that. And if you want to support us further, you can buy me a coffee, leave a donation, check out our merch. We have merch with many cute designs, I think. I think they're cute. For both your fur babies, your dogs and cats, as well as for yourself, for humans. And then if you're in the Los Angeles area or traveling or visiting in the LA area, come see us in person. We have a healing center that we use technologies based on Nikola Tesla's scalar wave research for holistic healing for both cats and dogs, domestic cats and dogs, as well as humans. So check us out. We have all the information on our website as well as our other services that we provide. So come check it out and come join us. And we would love to meet you in person and get to know you in person. So, all right. So let us begin. This is The Creature from Jekyll Island, and this is chapter 6. Sorry, not 6. It's 26. We're almost to the tail end of the book, and I want to congratulate you guys for sticking with your gun, sticking with us all this time. It's been a long journey, but it's been a fun journey, in my opinion, for me at least. So this is chapter 26, and this is part 1. Okay, let's see here. If you have a book, you can follow with us there. If not, you can follow with us here on camera. And I'm going to move the camera in a little bit so you can see better and adjust the camera. So bear with me just for a minute here. Okay, how about that? Okay, here we go. Chapter 26, a realistic scenario. What must be done if we are to avert the pessimistic scenario? A list of specific measures that must be taken to stop the monetary binge, an appraisal of how severe the economic hangover will be, a checklist for personal survival and beyond. Okay, let me move that in just a little bit more. Okay, I think that's good. The pessimistic scenario presented in the previous chapter is the kind of narrative that turns people off. No one wants to hear those things, even if they are true, or we should say, especially if they are true. As Adlai Stevenson said when he was a candidate for president, quote, the contest between agreeable fancy and disagreeable fact is unequal. Americans are suckers for good news, end quote. So, where is the optimistic scenario in which everything turns out all right, in which prosperity is restored and freedom is preserved after all? Actually, it's not hard to locate. You can find it every day somewhere in your newspaper. It is the shared faith of almost all politicians, experts, and commentators. If that is what you want to hear, you have just washed a lot of time. Sorry, you have just wasted a lot of time reading this book. Okay, sorry about that. This is a very thick book, and so I'm trying to uh, not kind of move the book so it's not too lopsided. There we go. Okay. There is no optimistic scenario. Events have progressed too far for that. Even if we begin to turn things around by forcing Congress to cut spending, reduce the debt, and disentangle from UN treaties, the cabal will not let go without a ferocious fight. And just a side note, we are seeing that fight play out right now in 2026, early 2026, yeah? When the Second Bank of the United States was struggling for its life in 1834, Nicholas Biddle, who controlled it, set about to cause as much havoc in the economy as possible, and then to blame it on President Jackson's anti-bank policies. By suddenly tightening credit and withdrawing money from circulation, he triggered a full-scale national depression. At the height of his attack, he declared, quote, all other banks and all the merchants may break, but the Bank of the United States shall not break. And a footnote on that is C, chapter 17. The amount of devastation that could be caused by today's Federal Reserve is infinitely greater than what Biddle was able to unleash. It would be pure self-deception to think that the cabal would quietly give up its power without exercising that option. We must conclude that no one is going to get out of this one unscathed. There is hell to pay, and it is we who are going to pay it. Seventh reason to abolish the Fed. What has any of this to do with the Federal Reserve System? The answer is that the Federal Reserve is the starting point of the pessimistic scenario. The chain of events begins with fiat money created by a central bank, which leads to government debt, which causes inflation, which destroys the economy, which impoverishes people, which provides an excuse for increasing government power, which is an ongoing process accumulating in totalitarianism. Eliminate the Federal Reserve from this equation, and the pessimistic scenario ceases to exist. That is the seventh and final reason to abolish the Fed. It is an instrument of totalitarianism. Boy, just another side note, we're seeing the abolish abolishment, abolishment. What is that word? Anyways, we're seeing the Fed at its last legs right now in real time. So it's very exciting to see that. Okay, got a little squirrel there. I got a little excited there for a minute. Okay, if the optimistic scenario is too optimistic and the pessimistic scenario is too pessimistic, then what is the scenario that we should hope lies in our future? There is a middle course that lies between optimism and pessimism. It is called realism. Calling it a realistic scenario is not meant to imply that it is predetermined to happen, nor that it is even likely to happen. It is realistic only in the sense that it can happen if certain conditions are met. The balance of this chapter will be devoted to an analysis of those conditions. Let us begin by allowing our opponent, cynicism, to state the problem we face. Quote, is it realistic to believe that the current trends can actually be reversed? Isn't it just fantasy to think that anything can be done at this late date to break the CFR's hold over government, media, and education? Do we really expect the gum-chewing public to go upstream against the indoctrination of newspapers, magazines, television, and movies? End quote. Apathy joins in. Forget it. There's nothing you can do. The bankers and politicians have all the money and all the power. The, the game is already over. Make the most of it and enjoy life while you can. Do not listen to cynicism and apathy. They are agents of your enemy. They want you to quietly get in line and submit without a struggle. However, they do make a point that it must not be overlooked. The battle has progressed far, and our position is not good. If we are to reverse the present trends, we must be prepared to make a Herculean effort. That does not mean, quote, write your congressman, or vote on Tuesday, or sign a petition, or send a donation. That is far too easy. Those measures still play an important role in the battle plan, but they fall far short of the need. Armchair campaigns will no longer do it. Before turning to the question of what kind of effort will be required, let us first be clear on what it is we want to accomplish. What must not be done? Let us begin with the negatives. What must not be done? The most obvious item in this category is that we must not turn to the government for more of the same cures that have made us ill. We do not want more power granted to the Fed or the Treasury or the President, nor do we need another government agency. We probably don't even need any new laws, with the possible exception of those legislative acts which repeal some of the old laws now on the books. Our goal is the reduction of government, not its expansion. We do not want to merely abolish the Fed and turn over its operation to the Treasury. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. All right. That is a popular proposal among those we know there is a problem. You know what? Let me try that again. Let me do that paragraph again. We do not want to merely abolish the Fed and turn over its operation to the Treasury. That is a popular proposal among those who know there is a problem, but who have not studied the history of central banking. It is a recurrent theme of the populist movement and those advocating what they call social credit, which is happening right now in China, incidentally. Their argument is that the Federal Reserve is privately owned and is independent of political control. Only Congress is authorized to issue the nation's money, not a group of private bankers. Let the Treasury issue paper money and bank credit, they say, and we can have all the money we need without having to pay one penny in interest to the bankers. It is an appealing argument, but it contains serious flaws. First, the concept that the Fed is privately owned is a legal fiction. The member banks hold stock, but it carries no voting weight. No matter how large the bank or how much capital is paid in, each bank has a vote. The stock cannot be sold or traded. Stockholders have none of the usual elements of control that come with ownership, and in fact, they are subservient to the central board. The seven members of the Board of Governors are appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. It is true that the Fed is independent of direct political control, but it must never be forgotten that it was created by Congress and it can be extinguished by Congress. Congress. Ah, that's interesting. So the idea that the Federal Reserve is a private entity is not entirely true then. Hmm, interesting. In truth, the Federal Reserve is neither an arm of the government nor is it private. It is a hybrid. It is an association of the large commercial banks, which has been granted special privileges by Congress. A more accurate description would be simply that it is a cartel protected by federal law. Oh, that's interesting. But the more important point is that it makes no difference whether the Fed is government or private. Even if it were entirely private, merely turning it over to the government would not alter its function. The same people undoubtedly would run it, and they would continue to create money for political purposes. The Bank of England is the granddaddy of central banks. It was privately owned at its inception, but became an official arm of the British government in more recent times. It continues to operate as a central bank, and nothing of substance has changed. The central banks of all the other industrialized nations are direct arms of their respective governments. They are indistinguishable in function from the Federal Reserve. The technicalities of structure and ownership are not as important as function. Turning the Federal Reserve over to the Treasury without at the same time denuding it of its function as a central bank, that is, its ability to manipulate the money supply, would be a colossal waste of time. The proposal of having the Treasury issue the nation's money is another question and has nothing to do with who owns the Fed. There is nothing wrong with the federal government issuing money as long as it abides by the Constitution and adheres to the principle of honesty. Both of these restraints forbid Congress from issuing paper money that is not 100% backed by gold or silver. If you are in doubt about the reasoning behind that statement, it would be a good idea to review Chapter 15 before continuing. It is true that if Congress had the power to create as much money as it needs without the Federal Reserve System, interest would not have to be paid on the national debt. But the Fed holds only a small portion of the debt. The majority of those bonds are held by individuals and institutions in the private sector. Terminating interest payments would not hurt those big bad bankers nearly as much as it would the millions of people who would lose their insurance policies, investments, and retirement plans. The social credit scheme would wipe out the economy in one fell swoop. And we still would not have solved the deeper problem. The bankers would be cut out of the scam, but the politicians would remain. Congress would now be acting as its own central bank. The money supply would continue to expand. Inflation would continue to roar, and the nation would continue to die. Besides issuing money without gold or silver, backing violates the Constitution. The JFK rumor. In 1981, a rumor was circulated that President Kennedy had been assassinated by agents of the hidden money power because he had signed Executive Order number 11110, instructing the Treasury to print more than $4 billion in United States notes. That is precisely the kind of money we are discussing. Paper currency without gold or silver backing issued by the government, not the Federal Reserve. According to the rumor, the bankers were furious because they would lose interest payments on the money supply. When the order was tracked down, however, it involved silver certificates, not United States notes. Silver certificates are backed by silver, which means they are real money. So the rumor was wrong on that point. But there is no interest paid on silver certificates either. So the rumor held up on that point. There was a third point, however, which everyone seemed to overlook. The executive order did not instruct the Treasury to issue silver certificates. It merely authorized it to do so if the occasion should arise. The occasion never arose. The last issuance of silver certificates was in 1957, and that was 6 years before the Kennedy executive order. In 1987, the order was rescinded by Executive Order 12608, signed by President Reagan. The government did print some U.S. notes in 1963, but these were in response to an 1868 Act of Congress, which directed the Treasury to maintain the amount of U.S. notes outstanding at a fixed level. That required worn or damaged specimens of older notes to be replaced by new ones. Some of these new notes did get into circulation but were quickly snapped up by private collectors. They never became a significant part of the money supply and were not intended to. This printing was not ordered by JFK, and in fact, there was no reason for him even to have had knowledge of it. The present rumor regarding the banker's role in JFK's death was reinforced by several books circulated in conservative circles. They contain an ominous passage from Kennedy's speech at Columbia University just 10 days before his assassination. He is quoted as saying, quote, "The high office of president has been used to foment a plot to destroy the Americans' freedom. And before I leave office, I must inform the citizen of his plight," end quote. And that quote was from quoted by M.J. Red Beckman, Born Again Republic, Billings, Montana, Freedom's Church, 1981, page 23. Also by Lindsay Williams, To Seduce a Nation, Castleoff, Arkansas, Worth Publishing, 1984, page 26. Okay. All right. However, when Columbia University was contacted to provide a transcript of the speech, it was learned that Kennedy never spoke there, neither 10 days before his assassination nor at any other time. Ronald Whelan, head librarian at the John Fitzgerald Kennedy Library in Boston, provides this additional information. Quote, 10 days prior to the assassination, he was at the White House meeting with, among others, the ambassador to the United States from Portugal, end quote. And that quote was from Letter to Holly Haswell, curator at the Low Memorial Library, Columbia University, October 13, 1987. It is just a side note, it is very interesting to see that how um, facts, quote unquote, facts can be number one, falsified, number two, manipulated, number three, omitted, and number four, actual event that happened or actual fact that happened, right? So we never can truly know what happened in any given history or events, right? Interesting, huh? It's just a thought that came to me. Um, we can never really know, quote, the truth or what the true facts are because we weren't there. I don't know. It's just a thought that came to me as I was reading that. What do you think? Leave your comments in the comments below. I'd be interested to think what you're interested to know what you're thinking. Anyways, just a little side note there. Sorry about that. Okay, continue. It is possible that the president did make the remarks attributed to him on a different date before a different audience. Even so, it is a cryptic message that could have several meanings. That he intended to expose the Fed is the least likely of them all. Kennedy has been a lifelong socialist and internationalist. Oh, that's very interesting. He had attended the Fabian London School of Economics, participated in the destruction of the American money supply, and engineered the transfer of American wealth to foreign nations. See page 109. There is little reason to believe that he had suddenly, quote, seen the light and was reversing his lifelong beliefs and commitments. And quote, a footnote on that was for a more comprehensive analysis of the JFK myth, visit the website www.realityzone.com and see the update section for the creature from Jekyll Island. Well, I don't know about that statement. I think there is some truth to that, but I think also people can change their thinking, especially people who are critical thinkers and who are open-minded. It is possible to change their lifelong belief systems and commitments. But we don't know. We don't know what's going on in JFK's mind, right? All we can know is what we see in terms of his behaviors and his actions, and we make a deduction or you know inference from that. But we never could truly know their true motivation. Anyways, I just wanted to kind of mention that. That's just my thought. But what do you think? Let me know. I'd be interested. Okay, continuing. Monetarists versus supply siders. But we are off the topic. Let us return to those unworkable theories regarding monetary reform. Prominent in this category are the monetarists and the supply siders. The monetarists, adhering to the theories of Milton Friedman, believe that money should continue to be created by the mandrake mechanism of the Federal Reserve, but that the supply should be determined by a strict formula established by Congress, not the Fed. The supply siders, represented by Arthur Laffer and Charles Cadleck, believe in formulas also, but they have a different one. They want the quantity of money to be determined by the current demand of gold. They're not talking about a true gold standard in which paper money is fully backed. By following what they call a gold price rule, they would simply observe the price of gold in the free market and then tinker with the dollar by expanding or contracting the money supply to keep its relative value compared to gold fairly constant. These groups share the same underlying philosophy. Each has a different formula, but they agree on method, manipulation of the money supply. They share the same conviction that the free market will not work without assistance, the same faith in the wisdom and integrity of politically created formulas, bureaus, and agencies. The Fed remains unscathed throughout all these debates because it is the ultimate mechanism for intervention. These people don't really want to change it. They just want their turn at running it. Occasionally, a truly original proposal appears that captures one's attention. Addressing a prestigious gathering of conservative monetary theorists in 1989, Jerry Jordan suggested that the monetary base could be expanded by holding a national lottery. The government would pay out more dollars in prize money than it received in ticket sales. The excess would represent the amount by which the monetary base would expand. Presumably, if they wanted to contract the money supply, they would pay out fewer dollars than taken in. It was an intriguing thought, but Mr. Jordan was quick to add, quote, the problem, of course, is that there would not be any effective institutional restraint on the growth of the monetary base, end quote. Indeed, that is the problem, which with all schemes involving monetary control by men. Now, that particular quote is from The Future of Price Stability in a Fiat Money World by Jerry L. Jordan. Durrell Journal of Money and Banking, August 1989, page 24. Balanced Budget Amendment. A so-called balanced budget amendment to the Constitution is not the answer either. In fact, it is an illusion and a fraud. Some of the biggest spenders in Congress are supporters. They know that it is popular with the voters, but would not cramp their spending style in the least. If they were not permitted to spend more than they receive in taxes, they would have a perfect excuse for raising taxes. It would be a way of punishing the voters for placing limits for placing limits on them. The voters, on the other hand, would collapse under the burden of higher taxes and demand that their congressmen circumvent the very amendment they previously supported. And that would be easy. Most versions of the balanced budget amendment have an escape hatch built for just that purpose. Congress shall balance its budget, quote, except in cases of emergency. Who decides what constitutes an emergency? Congress, of course. In other words, Congress shall balance its budget, except when it doesn't want to. So what else is new? A serious amendment would have to tackle not balancing the budget, but limiting the spending. If that were done, the budget would take care of itself. And even that would be a waste of time, considering the present composition of Congress. Instead of generating political pressure for a constitutional amendment, we would be better off directing that same effort toward throwing the big spenders out of office. As long as the spenders are allowed to stay in there, we will find a way to get around any law, including the Constitution itself. Another flaw in most versions of the balanced budget amendment is that it would not affect the off-budget expenditures called entitlements. They now represent 52% of all federal outlays and are growing by 12% each year. A strategy that ignores that backbreaking load is not worth even considering. Even if Congress could be forced to stop deficit spending, the balanced budget amendment would not solve the problem of inflation or paying off the national debt. The Federal Reserve can now fluctuate our money supply by using literally any debt in the world. It does not have to come from Congress. Unless we zero in on the Fed itself, we will just be playing political games with no chance of winning. Every year, a few concerned congressmen submit a bill to investigate or audit the Federal Reserve System. They are to be commended for their effort, but the process has been an exercise in futility. Their bills receive little or no publicity and never get out of committee for a vote. Even if they did receive serious attention, however, they could actually be counterproductive. On the surface, it would appear that there is nothing wrong with a congressional investigation or an audit. But what is there to investigate? We must assume the Fed is doing exactly what it says and is in total compliance with the law. A few minor improprieties probably would be discovered involving personal abuse of funds or insider profiteering, but that would be minor compared to the gigantic fraud that is already out in the open for all to see. The Federal Reserve is the world's largest and most successful scam. Anyone who understands the nature of money can see that without a team of investigators and auditors. The danger in a proposal to audit the Fed is that it would delay serious actions for years while the audit is going on. It would give the false impression that Congress is doing something. It would also give the monetary technicians an opportunity to lay down a smokescreen of verbiage and confusing statistics. The public would expect that all the answers would be forthcoming from the investigation, but the very groups and combines that need to be investigated would be conducting, or at least confounding, the investigation. By the time 14 volumes of testimony, charts, tables, and exhibits finally appear, the public would be intimidated and fatigued. We do not need a bill to audit the Fed. We need one to abolish it. A plan for eliminating the Fed. So much for things not to do. All that would be required to abolish the Federal Reserve System is an act of Congress consisting of one sentence. The Federal Reserve Act and all of its amendments are hereby rescinded. But that would wipe out our monetary system overnight and create such havoc in the economy that it would play right into the hands of the globalists. They would see the resulting chaos as evidence that such a move was a mistake, and the American people then likely would welcome a rescue from the IMF World Bank. We would find ourselves back in the pessimistic scenario, even though we had done the right thing. There are certain steps that must be that must precede there are certain steps that must precede the abandonment of the Fed if we are to have a safe passage. The first step is to convert our present fiat money into real money. That means we must create an entirely new money supply, which is 100% backed by precious metal. And we must do so within a reasonably short period of time. And here's a footnote about that. Most money is issued by governments, but there are many examples of private money that has functioned better than politically created money. A recent example is in the US was the Liberty Dollar, a privately issued currency 100% backed by silver and gold. In November 2007, its assets were seized by the government on the absurd claim that people might mistake it for worthless Federal Reserve notes. All right. To that end, we also must establish the true value of our present fiat money so it can be exchanged for new money on a realistic basis and phased out of circulation. Here is how it can be done. Number one, repeal the legal tender laws. The federal government will continue accepting Federal Reserve notes in the payment of taxes, but everyone else will be free to accept them, reject them, or discount them as they wish. There is no need to force people to accept honest money. Only fiat money needs the threat of imprisonment to back it up. Private institutions should be free to innovate and to compete. If people want to use green stamps or Disney ride coupons or Bank of America notes as a medium of exchange, they should be free to do so. The only requirement should be faithful fulfillment of contract. If the green stamp company says it will give a crystal lamp for 7 books of stamps, then it should be compelled to do so. Disney should be required to accept the coupon in exactly the manner printed on the back. And if Bank of America tells its depositors they can have their dollars back anytime they want, it should be required to keep 100% backing coins or treasury certificates in its vault at all times. Excuse me. In the transition to a new money, it is anticipated that the old Federal Reserve notes will continue to be widely used. Number two, freeze the present supply of Federal Reserve notes, except for what will be needed in step number 6. 3, define the real dollar in terms of precious metal content, preferably what it was in the past, 371.25 grains of silver. It could be another weight of silver or even another metal, but the old silver dollar is a proven winner. Number 4, establish gold as an auxiliary monetary reserve, which can be substituted for silver, not at a fixed price ratio, but at whatever ratio is set by the free market. Fixed ratio always become unfair over time as the prices of gold and silver drift relative to each other. Although gold may be substituted for silver at this ratio, it is only silver that is the foundation for the dollar. Number 5, restore free coinage at the U.S. Mint and issue silver dollars as well as gold pieces. Both dollars and pieces will be defined by metal content, but only coins with silver content can be called dollars, half dollars, quarter dollars, or tenth dollars, which is dimes. At first, these coins would be derived only from metal brought into the mint by private parties. They must not be drawn from the treasury supply, which is reserved for use in step number six. Number six. Excuse me. Pay off the national debt with Federal Reserve notes created for that purpose. Creating money without backing is forbidden by the Constitution. However, when no one is forced by law to accept Federal Reserve notes as legal tender, they will no longer be the official money of the United States. They will be merely a kind of government script, which no one is required to accept. Their utility will be determined by their usefulness in payment of taxes and by the public's anticipation of having them exchanged for real money at a later date. The creation of Federal Reserve notes with the understanding that they are not the official money of the United States would therefore not be a violation of the Constitution. In any event, the deed is already done. The decision to redeem government bonds with Federal Reserve notes is not ours. Congress decided that long ago, and the course was set at the instant those bonds were issued. We were merely playing out the hand. The money will be created for that purpose. Our only choice is when, now or later. If we allow the bonds to stand, the national debt will be repudiated by inflation. The value of the original dollars will gradually be reduced to zero while only the interest remains. Everyone's purchasing power will be destroyed and the nation will die. But if we want not to repudiate the national debt and decide to pay it off now, we will be released from the burden of interest payments and at the same time prepare the way for a sound monetary system. Number 7, pledge the government's hoard of gold and silver, except the military stockpile, to be used as backing for all the Federal Reserve notes in circulation. The denationalization of these assets is long overdue. At various times in recent history, it was illegal for Americans to own gold, and their private holdings were confiscated. The amount which was taken should be returned to the private sector as a matter of principle. The rest of the gold supply also belongs to the people because they paid for it through taxes and inflation. The government has no use for gold or silver except to support the money supply. The time has come to give it back to the people and use it for that purpose. Number 8, determine the weight of all the gold and silver owned by the U.S. government and then calculate the total value of that supply in terms of real silver dollars. Okay, we'll stop here for now. That's a very interesting. I like that the author gave us the history of money, of the Federal Reserve, of the monetary system, and it talks about the current events, right? And also possible solutions. I like that. That's very, very, very nice. Very nice. I enjoyed that a lot. Well, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. And we're almost to the tail end of the book. What is it called? The home run, or whatever that phrase is called. But anyways, I will see you next time in the next book club. And I hope you guys all have a great day, great evening, great afternoon, wherever you guys are. Okay, bye-bye now.